from the crypt.
Hello, boys and ghouls. Welcome to episode 94 of Dads from the Crypt. My name is Jason, and tonight I'm joined by Jody.
Hello.
And we have a very special guest. We are joined by writer and podcaster John Grilz. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on. It's super late, so I'm going to try and stay awake as best as I can.
And we're recording an hour earlier than we normally do, so
Yeah.
You West Coasterners.
I know.
Well, I'm in Tennessee, but I have vampire hours, so yeah.
My kids are going to be awake in like 6 hours.
Oh. All
That hurts
right.
a little bit.
Well, let's get to it. You're a podcaster with the Bloody Disgusting Network.
I am.
Which shows do you do?
Well, so I'm the creator, showrunner of Creepy, and I do most or the hosting duties. I do the majority of at least our main Sunday productions. We have a pretty big crew of narrators now, from the one-man show that it started out as. But I also host SCP Archives, which is showrun and produced by Pacific Obadiah, and then I co-host the Bloody Disgusting podcast, where myself, Megan Navarro, and Zena Dixon all just talk about the horror movies we love.
Awesome. And yeah, you did a great episode on horror anthologies, and that's how I was like, my friend Whitney's like, get this guy.
I felt so bad after that when both Megan and Zena are like, oh yeah, Southbound. We love Southbound. I was like, which one's Southbound? Just like the collective gasp I got from them. And then I went and watched Southbound. I was like, oh, I get it. Yeah, I was the idiot for not knowing what Southbound is. It's fantastic. And of course, I had to wax poetic about Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah.
Of course.
So yeah, let's actually pivot that. Tell us about your favorite Tales from the Crypt memories. When did you start watching it, etc.?
You know, I was trying to think about that because I did not grow up a horror kid at all. I kind of like dip my toes in like Nightmare on Elm Street. If it was on like commercial television, I might watch a little bit of it, or the original It miniseries when it was in reruns and things like that. But I never really got into horror until like high school. And the first Tales from the Crypt memory that I really remember is probably actually the episode you're going to do after mine.
Yeah.
As I was thinking about For You Murderer. Because what I remember, and at the time growing up when it premiered, which is probably what, like 91, 92, something like that.
89 was the first season.
Oh, okay. Well, whenever You Murder was like, so
no, that
would have been like 94 or so.
Yeah, that was 95.
Okay. So it was around then, you know, like that HBO, it wasn't like there was a ton of options for cable, but HBO was like cheaper or something if you got it with the bundle package.
Right.
And I must have watched an episode of Tales from the Crypt or something else, but I remember there was like this little mini documentary about the making of You Murderer and how it was going to revolutionize everything because it was Humphrey Bogart's face. It was going to be shot POV, and there's going to be camera shots and how we're hiding the camera, and Robert Zemeckis is talking about it and all that. And you know, I recently rewatched it and I look back, I was like, wow, that was cutting edge in 94, wasn't it? That was like watching like The Seventh Guest or the 11th Hour video games or whatever, how those were so amazing when they first came out, and now it's like almost unplayable. And I think that was the first time I really remember Tales from the Crypt beyond a casual mention for like the horror fans who I went to school with. Might have talked about the Crypt Keeper. There's probably a couple of kids who laughed like the Crypt Keeper. But I didn't really get into it until probably around 16, 17. And then it was just fell in love with it. Like that's probably helped formulate so much of what I love in horror, like the campiness and the cheesiness and the outrageous like grindhouse horrors of like the 80s and early 90s. And you know, now I have all the DVDs. I rewatch all the DVDs over again, and I'm just praying someday it comes to streaming so that can just be on in my office while I'm working all the time. And so I don't have to go through the restart screen over and over
Yes.
again for every single episode.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about that episode next week, but I'm also kind of afraid to rewatch it because I remember it being like mind blowing at the time.
Right.
And,
Well,
it kind of is if you
Yeah.
put yourself in that space.
Right.
If nothing
right.
else, you get some John Lithgow, and there's nothing wrong
Yeah.
with John Lithgow. So
And also, again, we don't want to talk about that one too much yet, but it's kind of really ahead the curve in the idea of posts, like using actors after they've passed away, like the whole thing that is becoming a really big deal right now. We're really on the cusp of some things that could be going on in that way, in the whole realm. But we'll get into that because we're gonna have a whole.
I'm sure I'll mention it next week, but I remember my parents talking about their minds being blown watching Forrest Gump and JFK saying he had to pee, like it was mind blowing stuff in the early 90s.
I remember, all that was, and now we get de-aging technology, which is something I don't particularly like in horror movies or any movies really, because it's still very uncanny valley for me.
It doesn't look right.
Yeah, like Skeet Ulrich in the last couple of Scream movies. I'm like, I get it. I see what they're doing with it. And Scream 6 did it the best so far because it was so minimal. I wasn't a huge fan of like the rear view mirror and stuff like that. It's too much.
But at least it's from her, again, not to go off on a tangent, but it's from her perspective, so it's not supposed to be realistic, and you can make and they do a good job of having like being a mirror, like a reflection, so it's not like in Scream 6 especially, so they kind of step back a little bit from that.
Listen, it wouldn't be a conversation with me if it wasn't like 90% tangents.
Right.
That's our whole show. So
that's where we usually go. Okay, one more thing though. I watched the movie Air a couple nights ago, the one about Jordan being signed with Nike. And they did the smartest thing ever. They didn't like have a Michael Jordan lookalike. They didn't have like a de-aging or some CG. They just didn't show him. They just had him from behind. It's like, because there's no way you can have probably the most recognizable athlete in the world and have someone else play him or have him play himself but not look right. Like, it was just, I'm like, sometimes the simplest answer is the best.
Well, and it's also just a good idea because as much as it's a story about him, it's not about him.
Right, exactly.
Right.
It's not, well, it's not his story. It's just about him.
Yeah.
So you don't need to show him. And exactly to your point, I think it would draw people out if you saw a lookalike or CGI or whatever.
Like, I was afraid they would do like one shot at the end of him like picking up the shoes, like and him going, just do it or something like that with like some CGI. I'm like, that would have been so terrible. Some director would have tried to do that, but I'm so glad they didn't.
There was some
at some point.
Yeah. There was an executive note. Absolutely. Some executive somewhere said, but where's Michael Jordan show up? Why isn't Michael Jordan in this?
Yeah. Okay, but let's switch over to some announcements. We are very excited to announce that we're doing another sponsorship with our friends over at Fright Rags. If you're trying to decide what to get for your spooky dad in your life, go to Fright Rags. They have an amazing selection of horror and sci-fi themed accessories and clothing. They just released a new The Crow series line. Really cool stuff. We'll talk more about them as we get closer to Father's Day, but what I love about Fright Rags the most is that they're not just putting the logo of a movie on. They're actually getting really cool original artwork, stuff you never see anywhere else. I've shopped there many times. Jody has shopped there. You go to the convention, you see all their shirts everywhere. Great stuff.
Yeah, I support them too. They are not paying me to say this, but if you want to pay me to say it, I will accept your money. I have Fright Rags stuff because I saw their ad like right before Halloween. I got a Halloween 3 stocking cap. So I've got the silver shamrock, like pumpkin stocking cap that I wore all summer or all winter, which lasted 8 months here.
Right.
But yeah, no, they have great stuff. They have really, really cool stuff.
And it's quality too at last. I wore my Dream Master X-Men mashup shirt to we went to Ren Fair for Mother's Day yesterday, and I got so many people commenting on it. Like, people were trying to comment in like old timey language, and I couldn't figure out what the hell they were saying. It was really awesome. So yeah, we're doing a sponsorship with them between now and Father's Day. And also, if you want to get something from them, you can get 10% off your order by using promo code DADSCrypt10, all one word, DADSCrypt10. Another announcement, we're kicking off a new series, As If I'm Not Busy Enough, on our podcast. We are covering the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror series. The first two episodes will come out next Sunday, so that will be Memorial Day weekend. The first one will be free on our normal feed where you're listening to this. The second episode will be on our Patreon at the $3 level. Then we will continue to release 2 episodes per month on our Patreon. So as they say, the first taste is free. The rest you gotta pay for. But we have some
anthologies.
Yeah. But we have some amazing guests. The first 2 episodes are going to be with our good friend Zoran from the Dead Meats YouTube channel and Low Carb Comedy. And then we also have Caitlin from Blog It Up for another couple episodes. And we'll be working our way through those episodes for a long time. I think there's about 40 episodes. So 2 episodes a month, 40 episodes. We'll be doing this for a little while, so come and enjoy some good Simpsons Treehouse of Horror. Hopefully,
yeah, we're gonna run out of Tales from the Crypt content before we run out of Simpsons.
Right.
God, yeah.
We just got 1 season left.
Okay. Now let's turn over to our episode of the week. We're talking about the most awkwardly titled episode. I'm going to try to say this correctly. 99 and 44 100% pure horror. This is the 14th episode of season 6. It premiered on January 18th, 1995. Jody, give us the plot synopsis.
All right. And before we actually get into the synopsis, real quick, the title comes from an old Ivory Soap advertising slogan that their soap was 99 and 4400% pure. So there is some sense to it. I had to figure it out. I had to go look it up because it's a nonsense title otherwise.
100 or whatever years later, it's nonsense. It's just like a mouth of marbles.
Yes. All right. So we open on the Crypt Keeper doing track and field stuff with a little headband on, and he's showing off his shot putting skills with a bunch of skulls. So, again, the Crypt Keeper in a costume, never a bad thing. We get into our actual episode here. It opens on a painting of, I guess it's like a flayed person or someone with their skin peeled back. There's a lot of these paintings throughout the episode of people. I guess flayed is probably the best word. They're just muscles and sinew and stuff showing on their bodies.
They got martyred.
Yeah.
Oh.
Anyway,
let's stick with flayed. Let's not bring up martyr.
So we go from that picture with some sounds in the background of a couple having sex, and she's painting the guy. The woman, whose name is Willa, picks the guy, Tom, out of bed and makes him leave as soon as she's done. And while she's taking her shower, her older, kind of soft-spoken, meek husband, Logan, comes home. The names in this one, Willa and Logan. He's the president of a soap company. And he's watching a promo video that says that their company doesn't use animal parts because there are acids in animals that could cause damage to people, and their company doesn't do that. Willa designed the artwork for his company's ad campaigns, but it's no longer testing very well, and they want a fresh new look. And she says, "That's great. I'll get to work on it and design it for you." The next day, we're at a talk show, and a kind of pompous artist named Ronaldo is talking about his work. He used to be a graffiti artist, but now he's doing real art, and it looks like something a small child could scribble together. And then Willa, I want to say Willow every time. Willa comes on the show, and the host asks her, very first question, "Hi, it's good to see you. Are your 15 minutes up? Is your career in life over?" And she mentions that she's redesigning the whole line for the soap company and tries to show off her gory artwork, but immediately gets cut off. When she gets home, Logan is sitting there, and he says that they cannot use her work for their new line. He says they have a new artist, Ronaldo, and she's, of course, furious about this. He tries to smooth things over, but she says she wants a divorce and that she's going to take half of his stuff. And that's when he shows her the pictures of her with Tom from the beginning. So she's not going to get anything in a divorce. Luden's still trying to work things out, but Willa grabs a big block of soap attached to a very thick rope. Like it's soap on a rope on steroids. This is like a 4-pound brick of soap on a inch wide rope, and she beats him in the head with it until he's dead. Tom rings the doorbell while she's finishing up, and he starts yelling at her to let him through, and she's trying to clean up the crime scene. She ends up rolling him up in a rug and lets Tom in. Tom thinks she's covered in paint because she's red from head to toe. And she tells Tom she needs him to help him move the rug, and they start making out on top of the rug with her husband's dead body in it, and his head starts poking out the top. And so she makes him go take care of some things while she kicks him in the head repeatedly to smash his head back into the rug. After loading it, she tells Tom to go away, drives to the soap factory. And this Luden isn't completely dead, apparently. He jumps up and and then gets beat again by his wife, this time without the soap. The man, like at this point, it's fine that he's dead because he's been beaten in the head with soap so much and kicked in the head that he would not be the same man afterwards anyway. She takes his body and pushes it into a vat of acid that is used in the soap making process, and she turns on the machines, which manufactures soap out of her dead husband's body.
By pressing the automatic feature, the
automatic soap button.
It's packaged in everything.
You just have a vat, you push the button, it turns into soap.
If only they had that when the Joker fell into the chemicals at the Ace plant.
And then she gathers up the soap, it should be white, but it's pink because of his blood in it, I guess. And she takes it home. She dumps it all out into the sink, I guess, to dispose of it later, and goes to take a shower when she realizes she's out of soap. And so she grabs a bar of the soap with her husband freshly pressed into it. And while she's soaping up, it starts melting her skin, leading to some really incredible gore effects, like completely nuts. It starts with just like bubbles on her skin, but by the end, it's like a full shot from like waist up, and her entire body is just melting. It's a very amazing effect. Yeah. And then we close on one of her paintings, a self-portrait of her with her skin peeling off, much like what had just happened in the shower moments before.
Thank you, Jody. All right, John, you're our guest. You can start us off. What did you think of this episode?
This one it's interesting for me because I like it, but this is not a standout episode for me. Like if I'm thinking about like, oh, I'm gonna watch Tales from the Crypt, like usually an episode pops into my head, like Television Terror, Easel Kill Ya, or something like that. And this one doesn't, but it's not that I don't like it. There are episodes of Tales from the Crypt I don't care to watch particularly. Just there's a lot of episodes and not everything's gonna land. And like this one's watchable and it's concise. Like I was watching because on the DVD right before this one, like is Comes the Dawn. And I remember watching Comes the Dawn and thinking, I feel like this should have been a 90-minute movie that somehow they turned into 22 minutes because it seemed like they cut a lot of corners in the storytelling. But it's exactly this. Not only that, but it's created its own wraparound. The first image is the painting. The last image is the painting. She's actually turned into this art that she was willing to kill for in the first place that would end up killing her in the end. Just the general commentary on art and artists and the changing times and the concepts of fame and adultery and like even sexuality, like a sub-dom relationship. Like Tom drove me nuts for the longest time. What is wrong with this guy? Like he's begging, I was like, oh, it's a sub-dom relationship. I get it. Yeah. But if it was like, dude, have a little bit of dignity. What are you doing, man?
She doesn't even let him finish. She just pushes him
No.
off.
I know. And then he's just kind of like whimpering on the edge of the bed, and then he's screaming, up
Begging at the window.
Way to be real subtle in your affair, dude. And but you know, like honestly, like but it's a tight story. You know, it doesn't leave really hanging threads beyond, you know, I think I know the assumption is they drop him into acid, the body into acid, but I'm almost positive that the vat says like liquid glycerine. Well, glycerine's not acid.
Yeah, glycerin wouldn't actually hurt in any way.
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't do anything. It's like an additive at this point.
The only reason I thought acid, doesn't she say something like acid to acid, dust to dust when she dumps him in?
She did, and because it also echoes him talking, obviously, that we find out later, the concept of the acids that exist within like rendered animal parts or things like that, which this was made before Google, so maybe it's true, maybe it's not. I'm not going to fault the writers on this one.
Yeah, no one ever claimed that Tales from the Crypt was medically accurate.
Yeah,
this isn't Centipede.
Well, it was hard to look things up back then. You had to go to the library, or you had to get your parents' set of encyclopedias that had been out of date for 15 years, but you're still using that information on papers because you're hoping your teacher didn't have that volume. And what else are you going to do? I mean, writing's hard. Sometimes you just come up with stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, generally speaking, it's a good episode. It's not my favorite, but it's kind of hard for me to look at any flaws that aren't just nitpicky stuff for me.
Yeah. All right, Jody.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same place. Like it was a fun episode. I enjoyed watching it. It's not one that I'm necessarily going to go back to on a regular basis, but yeah, I enjoyed it, especially when things really heat up towards the end. It's kind of slow getting going, but once it gets going, it's you know, there's some fun moments. I mentioned in my synopsis, but that gore scene at the end is ridiculous. Like it's top tier Tales from the Crypt. The lead actress, what is her name? Cristi Conaway. She does a great job in this role because it's just over the top in the way that Tales from the Crypt is supposed to be. Like she, you know, it's big, but not over big. And, you know, no one's playing it too straight. But yeah, no, overall enjoyable. I like the concept of making someone into soap. Like that's unique as a way to dispose of a body. So, you know, well, after all the episodes we've done, like this is a fine episode. It's just not one that's necessarily going to be one that I think of very often.
Yeah, on the season 6 curve, it's a good episode. On the overall
True.
Crypt curve, it's probably subpar if you're looking at the whole series, but for this season, it's good. Yeah, I think Cristi Conaway gives a really good performance, and unfortunately, she didn't do much more acting. She went on to do like clothing design, I believe, and some fashion stuff. But I think she's got a lot of charisma, a lot of fire. Reminds me of, I can never say her name right. Is it Jamie Priestley? She was in like None Other Teen Movie, and My Name Is Earl.
Oh yeah, Jamie Presley. Presley.
Yeah. She reminded me of her a lot. Which, you know,
I can see that.
So I would like to see her go on to do more acting. I think she gives a really good performance. Hats off to Todd Masters. This is kind of his like Hellraiser moment.
Oh yeah, totally.
It gave me real like Clive Barker gooey vibes.
Oh yeah.
This is directed by Rodman Flender. He was head of production for Roger Corman's Concord Pictures for many years. Before he did some directing. He did Leprechaun 2. He did Idle Hands. And he did my personal favorite Dawson's Creek episode, The Scare. Let's see. Loudon is played by Bruce Davison, who was the original Willard back in like the 60s, I think. And he was an episode of Tales from the Dark Side and V. He played Senator Kelly in the X-Men movies. He was also in.
He is a guy who's made to play a senator.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I remember him in Spies Like Us. It was the same sort of a role. He was a Politico type guy.
Yeah.
He was also in At People, and he was recently in Ozark for a handful of episodes.
Oh, that's right. He was, wasn't he?
Yeah. Cristi Conaway, she had some smaller roles. She was in Doc Hollywood. She had a small role in Batman Returns, and I didn't know about this, but there was a Time Cop the series.
Oh, I think I remember that. I think it was on like the Sci-Fi Channel.
I don't remember at all, so I want to go. I need to go do a deep dive into that because I'm curious.
Well, when you say series, let's temper that expectation. I think it might have been a few episodes.
Yeah, well, it's like I tried to watch RoboCop the series the other night, just thought like nostalgia. I remember watching that as a kid, and I was like, oof, this is
not 9 episodes total made of Time Cop the series.
Oh well, hey, good for them. They made it 9.
Season. That's more than normal.
Yeah.
Let's see, Tom the fuckboy. He's played by Darin Heames. He was in Dr. Giggles, PCU, Night of the Demons 2, The Fear, and more recently, I guess, Sons of Anarchy, which I guess I don't know how long that's been off the air, but to me, that's recent.
Yeah, I just like 3 nights ago rewatched Night of the Demons 2. Mm-hmm. And I thought the whole time I was watching this, I'm like, is that guy? His character in that is called Z-Boy, and he is the most annoying character.
Yeah, I think that's a shtick.
Yeah, Xena and I share a love of Night of the Demons 2. It's just a comfort movie.
Calling it a love for Xena might be an understatement.
I do watch it, 3 or 4 times a year, usually.
Yeah, it's her version of my Hell House LLC.
Yeah, nice. Which I also love. Yeah.
And then Ronaldo, who criminally only has like that one scene. I don't know if he has a line in it, but he's just kind of there. Is played by Ricky Dean Logan, who was in Back to the Future 2 and 3 as some of Biff's
henchmen. Yeah, I think I remember him in that now.
But then he was most famously in my beloved Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, as Carlos. Probably my favorite Freddy's deaths. Interestingly, I looked this up. He also had a bit on ER where he had an ice pick stuck in his ear. So someone really likes to put this guy in ear trauma situations. But yeah, overall, it's a fun episode. It definitely has a good punch at the end, which is what you really want. You want some over-the-top performances, a good punch in the end. Not the best writing in the world. Directing's fine. It works. Again, on the season 6 curve, this is a good episode.
Yeah.
I did appreciate the eyeball at the end.
Yeah.
Almost like
it doesn't make any sense, but
no, not at all. Even when I rewatched it, I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why is that happening? But it's almost like Tales from the Crypt was saying it got a little too dark and serious. Let's remind you, I know we turned him into soap, but let's make an eyeball move in one of the bars of soap. Because
you brought up the It miniseries. It reminds me, there's that scene where they're opening the fortune cookies?
Yeah.
And there's like an eyeball in one of them, or like there's like an eyeball, and I forget what it's in. It's in some creature or something like that.
It's like a little crab thing or something.
Yeah, like eyeball. Now I thought it was going to be like different parts of him were going to start coming out of the soap, like his mouth would be like gnawing on her.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have assumed that if she started melting the soap in the sink or something, and all of a sudden all of his fingers and toes and teeth are in there or something.
Well, the whole thing about melting, because I guess the acids in the human body, if our acid was that strong, we would all melt into puddles constantly. Like, there's no way that he is full of that much acid, unless he has terrible.
I mean, there is acid in the stomach that could. That's extremely corrosive. Just not that much of it.
Yeah. Now, technically, the writer might have been setting that up because his character, the first time we meet him, is downing antacids, literally chewing on an Alka-Seltzer, and he mentions that it's hereditary. So maybe in his family he has this unusual amount of acid.
Okay.
So if it was anyone else, maybe it wouldn't have melted her skin.
You got it. Okay.
I take a Prilosec every day, but I don't know that I could melt somebody.
But okay.
But maybe
it's a good warning so people won't turn you into
just
soap.
in case. Just in case.
No, okay. That I totally forgot about that bit, and that makes them. They should have had like a thing of antacid on the counter, and she should have like picked it up or something. Like, oh, we don't need this anymore.
Yeah, just toss it on the ground with her clothes or whatever. I'm not gonna lie, I'm super proud of putting those 2 points together.
I know that was
on the fly. I'm
That's
super happy right now.
That was a really good pull. Or like if she was like her, it would be cool if like her like dissolving body would have been trying to reach for the antacids to try to like soothe it.
Try and douse herself with Alka-Seltzer.
That would have been very funny. All right, Jody, give us the comic comparison.
All right. Unusual for season 6, we actually have a comic that relates to the episode for the first time in a while. This came from Vault of Horror number 23, March 1952. It's the same issue that had Stared in Horror that we talked about not too long ago, and Dead Weight, which we talked about a long time ago with the Black Pearl thing and the red hair and all that.
That's the Romero, no, Toby Hooper episode.
Yeah.
Toby Hooper did that one?
Mm-hmm.
Huh. That was with the dad from Dexter, right?
Yep. James Remar.
Yeah, James Remar. Thank you.
And the guy from Indiana Jones.
Rhys Davis.
John Rhys Davis.
John Rhys Davis, yeah.
And Whoopi Goldberg.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on in that episode. Yeah, I feel like those early seasons got the big stars. You know, we've still got people who are recognizable, but like, oh yeah, I think I know that guy. But anyway, story by Al Feldstein, art by Jack Davis. In the comic, we've got a story about Ernie, who is the new manager of a soap company after the previous manager disappeared. After watching this episode, we can pretty much guess where he happened, or what happened to him. But he's the manager of a soap company, but he is living the high life. Like he's living in luxury and like this, fancy house. He's going on dates with showgirls. I don't know that the manager of a soap company is really rolling that high, but maybe in 1950s you could.
Did you see how much he was making? He said how he was making what, $10,000 a year.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, look out.
I don't know, by podcasting standards, that's not too shabby.
I was gonna say this is back in the 50s where a manager was living in luxury and not just the CEO of the company. But anyway, he's living in luxury and he needs to get a shower to get ready for his date with this showgirl whose name he can't remember. But the only soap in his house is soap he says he never intended to use. And we get a flashback to when Ernie used to work on the docks, living on a prayer joke, and he was unloading meat scraps from the trucks to be used in soap production. Like they go to the butchers, collect all this meat and gristle and bones and stuff, and they'd use it in the soap. Later, he worked on the rending vats, and then the comic gives us a lesson in soap making because it goes through all the steps. They boiled the scraps until the fats and the oils rose to the top, and then collected those, and then saponified them, which literally means turned into soap. That's I don't know what the process is, but it involves lye and it turns it into soap. And
haven't seen a Fight Club.
Hey, my wife went through a period where we were like trying to make some homemade soaps out of oils and stuff like that. It's kind of a neat process, but you have to use lye. And when you use lye, there are so many warnings on the bottle, like this stuff will murder you in your sleep. Like watch out for it. But anyway, so it turns into soap and then they add perfume and let it solidify. Ernie eventually became the manager or assistant manager and hated his boss, Benny. And so one day he stabs Benny until he's dead and then throws his body into the rending vats, boils his body, collects all the fats, and makes them into bars of soap, leaving all the scraps with all the animal scraps so that he can dispose of it. And then he takes those home just to remember him by. And so Ernie takes one of the bars of soaps into the shower with him. And as he's taking a shower, it gets in his eyes and burns, just like any other soap would. In trying to deal with this, he's kind of waving his hand around and turns off the cold water. So he's getting full hot. It's scalding him. And then he steps on that bar of soap, slips and falls in the shower and breaks his leg. He can't get up at all. Like his leg is that badly broken. And for some reason, the shower stall starts to fill up with scalding hot water. And he's reaching for the handle, trying to open it. It's just out of reach. He tries one last time to stand up, and that leg completely gives out, falls down into the water that's been building up in the shower stall, and he drowns. And then later, when the landlord comes and finds the body, they realize that the bar of soap had been blocking the drain. And so Benny, through a bar of soap, got his revenge. So similar in concept, the turning someone into soap. We don't have a cool melting scene in this one, although we do have a dude in a 1950s comic, a dude rolling around naked in a shower trying to get a hold of the handle with some very conveniently placed text bubbles that are keeping some things hidden. But it's a interesting story. And again, you're turning people into soap. I'm already in. Like, this is something I haven't seen before. And they took the title from an Ivory soap commercial that everyone would have been familiar with. So kind of a little pop culture reference-y stuff going on there too. But yeah, good comic, different than the episode, but both are fun in their own way.
Man, it's really making me second guess my choice to pay extra to hermetically seal my shower in my house. I think that's going to end poorly for me now.
Just builds up, and up, according to this. All it takes is 1 bar of soap.
Evidently. That's why you got to do body wash. It's your fault for using a bar of soap.
All right, let's move on to our episode rating. We do 0 to 5, 5 being the best, 0 being the worst. You can do half points. John, what do you give this episode?
So I'm gonna say, like, as far as a Tales from the Crypt episode, I give it a 3. Now, as far as an episode about soap, like the idea that they were in the writer's room and they're like, all right, we're gonna have an episode and it needs to involve soap. The writer that came up with this, they got a 5. So I'll split the difference and I'll call it a 4. Probably the best horror about soap that I've seen in a long, long time.
I'm curious how many other soap-themed horror movies you can come up with.
I couldn't name the last horror movie I watched, and that was this afternoon. So maybe a lot.
Was there soap
exclusively?
Was there soap in the Mangler? I'm trying to remember.
Oh God.
Was it just pressing?
Or in the Mutilator? No, there was no soap. Maybe a lot of hot tubs in horror. Not a whole lot of soap. Hot tubs, yeah. And probably Slumber Party Massacre.
I was just thinking about that, where she's like washing her face and it starts melting off.
Yeah.
All right, Jody.
Yeah, I was leaning 3 through this entire episode. I'm going to give it an extra half just for that ending scene in the shower with all the melting effects. They're just too good to not give it a half point.
So yeah, I was leaning 2.5, but again, for the effects and for Cristi Conaway's performance, I'm bumping up to 3. So it's just little things that we'll bump up an episode. I'll just give it a little bit more, but it's not anything earth-shattering as far as the Tales from the Crypt episode goes.
It's those little moments though that punctuate an episode, because through a lot of this episode, it was just the actors on stage, or on screen, talking and going through situations, stuff like that, and then all of a sudden you get this awesome shock scene, and that's those are it's the icing on the cake for a Tales from the Crypt, is you get those moments.
Yeah, I did take credit away from the lack of use for the criminally lack of Ricky Dean Logan. So I want more of him. I was expecting that character to come back.
And it's hard rating Tales from the Crypt episodes, right? Because you're comparing them against each other.
Yeah,
like that's a massive and amazing catalog to do that too. That's like if you ever go on like Amazon reviews and you look up Cormac McCarthy, and the people that are like, "Oh, The Road, best book ever." And then other people are like, "Oh, The Road's the worst book ever. You should read, like Blood Meridian. That's the best book ever." It's like, wait a second, you're comparing Cormac McCarthy against himself,
right?
And some of it's 1. Like that. What am I if he's a 1? That's insane. Like I have a different scale, so it's difficult, especially because everyone on the show obviously loves Tales from the Crypt too,
right?
So I used to be a very, very bitter horror movie watcher, just really consumer of any content, usually out of jealousy or spite or whatever. So it's also now hard for me that I kind of turned a corner. I'm like, no, it's a fun show.
Yeah, so it depends on so it depends on the mood, especially if I'm like rush watching it the day, like an hour before we're recording, or if I watch it like the day before when I have time to relax and just kind of take it in. It's all just subjective.
Yeah, I mean, if I watch Cutting Cards right before this,
Mhm.
Oh man.
or Forever Ambergris or something, then yeah, like I'm definitely gonna skew that scale. But if I watch Comes the Dawn before this,
Yeah.
it's not looking so bad.
It's
Yeah.
not like at the end of this series, Joel Silver is going to look through all of our ratings and berate us.
You know what? I would love that. That would be
No, I take
amazing.
money to be berated by John Silver.
Of all the
Wait.
people I've been berated by in my life, I'd love if Joel Silver was one of them.
That can be our episode right after we finally finish the series. If we can get Joel Silver just to comment on us,
Oh
like
my
I give
God.
you a 2, okay?
Yeah, just rate you two. Just,
Oh my
just
God.
blind, just on nothing else. Just
Something tells me he's probably not on Cameo, but we'll see.
you never know. Times are tough some all over. It happens.
Yeah. If the strike goes on long enough, we'll see.
Oh, there you go. Hopefully it
All
doesn't. Stand with WGA.
Yes.
Yes, 100%.
All right. Now let's kick it. Oh, speaking of excellent writers in the WGA, let's kick it over to our Uncle Al. And we're back. All right. Mondo's not here for our song of the day, so I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to choose a very personal one. Today, the day we're recording is May 15th, 2023, which means it is the, I believe, 23rd anniversary of one of my favorite albums, which is Lateralis by Tool. It is one of those albums that I have a very strong memory of picking up, opening it, putting it on, looking through the liner. And if you've ever seen it, it's this like really cool, almost like medical, like those little medical things where it kind of like peels off in different layers. And it's like doing that and all these like fantastic layers of the human body. And I just remember listening to it and just like being sucked into the album. And it's one of those, like within 10 seconds, I knew that this is going to be one of my all-time favorite albums the rest of my life. So in honor of that, I'm choosing the first track off of Lateralis called The Grudge, which I think is thematically poignant for this episode. I could have done Schism, but I've heard that song too many times, so I'm going The Grudge.
I think that was a good call.
Thank you.
I'm still a little disappointed that when Mondo's not here, we don't just fill up his playlist with songs that would upset him. Led Zeppelin. I'm still waiting for an ABBA song of the day. Like we got to get something in here just to mess with the format.
Fill it with the Divorced Dads playlist. Have you ever seen that?
No,
it's amazing. I think I'm getting the name of it right. I should look it up. But it's called like the Divorced Dads playlist. So if you look at the name of every single song, it is exactly the title of a song that would appear on a divorced guy's playlist.
right.
But I'm gonna find it just for the sake of this.
Yes, I need this in real time.
Let's see. Oh, is it in my library?
Oh
Divorced Dad Rock. Yeah.
my God.
So like Headstrong, Get Stoned, I Hate Everything About You, Break Stuff, Click Click
Definitely-
Boom.
Definitely
One
has some
step-
Limp Bizkit.
Yep, One Step Closer, She Hates Me, Good Bad Girl. Like every one of these where you just look at the title and you're like, yeah, perfect. Let Me
That
Go.
works.
Still
Mhm.
Waiting, Meant to Live. Yeah. It's just like it's amazing. Like I didn't even realize people could create and share Spotify playlists. I've just had like the same 6 songs on a playlist for the last 4 years. And then I started finding them like people are putting thought into these. This is awesome.
That's awesome. All right, Jody, give us some horror news.
Okay, so let's start with new releases. Evil Dead Rise just came out on VOD recently, and
Yay.
I haven't watched yet. I need to. I was going to, but a stomach bug hit our family right at the time I was going to the theater. So I haven't watched yet, but I will now that it's on VOD. We also have Robert Rodriguez's newest action thriller, Hypnotic, starring Ben Affleck, is going to be in theater. Oh, I guess it's in theaters right now.
No, it bombed.
Yeah,
really
no, it's
bad.
not.
Oh, did it?
Yeah,
Did it get bad
really great.
reviews?
If they said,
I mean,
I think it was just like a marketing. They said it's the biggest flop of the year so far.
Oh no. It kind of had
I
like
saw
an adjustments bureau, Dark City
Yeah.
type feel to it,
Yeah.
you know?
I saw a trailer, it looked good, but it didn't get much pump.
Yeah, I was on Bloody Disgusting earlier today, just browsing for news because I let somebody else do my work for me. And Megan actually reviewed this one with 2 out of 5 stars. So I generally trust her opinions, but
yeah, absolutely. Megan is by far, I'm so lucky to be able to work with her on the podcast because her reviews are by far my favorite.
Yeah.
Because it's not passion or prejudice. It's literally like, this is what I saw. This is what I think. There's no spite or anything. It's like, I loved it, or they needed this, or it was lacking this, or whatever. And they're fantastic reviews. So the fact that she gave it 2, I'll still take that.
I mean, in the world of horror, 2 is not necessarily a bad review.
No, I mean, well, also look at Edge of Tomorrow. Edge of Tomorrow basically bombed at the box office. That's a fantastic movie.
Right.
Basically because nobody knew what they were talking. Like, what's Edge of Tomorrow mean?
Yeah.
Emily Blunt and Tom Cruise in robot suits? What is this?
in time loops. Yeah, that was a good movie.
A couple other releases worth mentioning. Today is May 15th, and as of today, there's a movie called Project Wolf Hunting that came to Screambox, which it looks completely insane. It's a Japanese action horror, looks like Yakuza stuff, splattery, like completely, messy. It reminds me of like some of the early Takeshi Miike movies, like Ichi the Killer, like that kind of stuff, like big gory horror action from Japan. And tomorrow, Malum is already coming to VOD on May 16th. Very excited for that one. Haven't seen it yet either.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to go. Remake Last Shift.
Yeah, and I like Last Shift, so yeah, I'm hoping.
I've heard good things, so I'm excited to catch that one.
Okay, other horror news. For its 20th anniversary, Park Chan-wook's Old Boy is getting a restoration and returning to theaters on August 16th.
Yeah, I might have to go see that. Old Boy's one of my favorite movies.
Old Boy's fantastic. Park Chan-wook's fantastic. So yeah, if you haven't seen it, that's a perfect opportunity to watch it for the first time on the big screen. Speaking of restorations and upgrades, the Stephen King movie Needful Things is getting a 4K upgrade, and the Blu-ray also includes the debut of the 191-minute cut of the movie. So if you watched Needful Things and thought it was too short, there's a much longer version out there. I mean, it's a Stephen King book. Like, all of his movies could be, 4 or 5 hours to fit everything in there. And finally, this is a weird one, but it's one of the things I've seen talked about online a lot right now. There is a new show on Disney Plus called Muppets Mayhem that is a Muppets show based on the Electric Mayhem, the band in the Muppets, Dr. Teeth and Electric Mayhem. It's their story. It's series. Well, on one episode, Peter Jackson guested, and in that episode, this dialogue took place. The little guy with the big orange mustache and the sunglasses that's been there forever. He says, talking to Peter Jackson, says, we ain't seen you since that night in Wellington when we met the Feebles. And then Peter Jackson says, yeah, it was a bad night. 2 of them are in witness protection and the rest are in prison. So what we have is confirmation of a shared universe between the Muppets and Peter Jackson's Meet the Feebles, which is completely insane that they made that canon now. Because
works for me.
I don't know. Have y'all seen Meet the Feebles?
A while ago, but
Long time ago.
That shit.
What a movie. Peter Jackson in his splatter era making a puppet movie. Sex, violence, gore, and puppets. It's good stuff. And now it is officially part of the Muppets universe. So I don't know if that counts as news to anyone else, but to me it does.
No, that's cool. I dig it. Here's our personal horror news. I finally finished the first season of Chucky.
Good.
It is fantastic.
It's so good.
As promised.
Such a good series. I'm watching through with my older kids right now, and we're having a great time with it. I've already seen it, but it's new to them.
And then I love that he does his own kill count at the end. That got me.
Yeah. It's so good. We, after we had our guest a couple weeks ago, who knows Chucky inside out, talking about Chucky is just, it makes me happy.
It's Kyra Gardner.
Yes.
All right, let's go over to our Patreon pit for our weekly Would You Rather. Let me just refresh in case we had any new ones. So our question of the week is, and this is appropriate for the episode, would you rather give up bathing or showering for a month or give up the internet for a month? And while you guys...
Yeah, it's bathing. I'm just gonna have to stay at home away from people. I can't, my job is online. I can't get by without it.
I was gonna say, just to make it fair, I would say like, except for your job, or I guess the podcast will have to go on hiatus for a month.
I mean, I went on some pretty long stretches during quarantine, so I don't think a month without a bath or shower is that terrible. I guess it just depends on, am I actually out moving around and sweating? Or am I just sitting at home on the internet that I so valiantly deserve for not taking a shower?
It probably depends on where you live, what time of year. Like, Minnesota throughout most of the year, I'm sure you could probably go a little bit longer. LA in the summer where I live.
Yeah, no, I'm Tennessee has reached its swamp level where it's now like 90% humidity all the time. But I still have to, I would just, sit in air conditioning if I knew I had to do this. Like, I'm going to make it happen. We'll make it work. I'm a 40-something-year-old man who lives in a small town. Like, all my friends are online too. Like, I don't have relationships outside of the internet.
Careful how you say that, Jody. But the thing, I'm like a notorious shower taker. I love showering. It's just my happy place. So it'd be really hard. So I also love the internet. So especially now that everything's streaming and on YouTube, it's like, it'd be really, really hard.
Yeah, but even when I take a shower, I tend to take a little speaker into the bathroom with me and listen to podcasts while I'm showering. I couldn't even do that. Like it even would affect my showers and make them not as enjoyable
That's
anymore.
true. That's very true. Our Patreons, there were 25% said give up showering / bathing for a month, and 75 would rather give up the internet. So
wow, you have some really hygienic patrons.
I know.
Good for them.
Our friend Whitney said, I'd probably get a lot more done without the internet, to be honest. So there's something to be said for internet detox.
Yeah.
But I could go like a week, I think, without internet. Like,
it just sounds like our patrons have a more healthy relationship with the internet than I do. Yeah.
I'm trying to think, like, the longest I've probably gone within the last like 10, 15 years was on my honeymoon. It was just like, because we're on a cruise, so we just kind of turned off our cell phones for like a week. And yeah, and that was the week that Prometheus came out, and I was like, I really wanted to like read out the reviews and see what was going on with that. It was a lot to get to.
I was fortunate to get married in 2003, where there was internet, but it wasn't like it is now. And so a week without internet then is no big deal. It was slow anyway. We all had dial-up. But now it's a little bit different. I don't know if I can say
that. You have it in your hand, on your phone.
Right.
You go. It's different. All righty. And then to wrap up our episode, we always finish with a little dad advice. I think we've talked a lot about hygiene tonight. I think dads always appreciate, getting a good hygiene. And Jody, last year you recommended, I'm trying to remember what's called, the cooling shower gel.
Oh, yeah. I don't remember what the brand on that was. I still use Duke Cannon soap. I know I talked about that.
Yeah, I think it's Duke Cannon. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think there's any bodies in it. And it's just okay, so this is a practical dad thing. Part of the reason I like this soap is it is like an inch thick. It is this huge freaking bar. So you just have to change that bar out like once every 2 or 3 months, even if you take frequent showers, because it takes forever to melt this bar down. And so that's just, an ode to laziness of not having to unwrap another bar. And also, it's good stuff. It smells good. It, keeps my beard soft. So I have no complaints.
Yeah, I usually get good. My recommendation is get good soap, because even like Dove, it lasts longer. It's got a little bit of moisturizer in there, because I don't have time to moisturize. So you got to get it where you can.
Am I sharing how I bathe too? Like, is that the part?
Yeah, go on.
You can if you want to. You don't have to, but
I I mean, I have to take baths. Well, no, I don't have to take baths. I choose to take baths sometimes because it gets cold in Minnesota and I don't have a hot tub, so I just make my tub hot. But generally for me, because most of my physical activities involve grappling and like wrestling, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, stuff like that. It's a lot of other people's sweat on me. So I usually use a soap that's specifically like a defense soap to make sure that I clean other people off of me. No eyeballs in the soap that I've noticed, but it'd be a selling point. I would buy more, or at least to get a bigger size bottle.
There is somebody listening to this episode right now who's already thinking about the Etsy shop they're getting ready to start, where they're like, I just need to buy a bunch of plastic eyeballs, stick them in the soap bars, and start selling them on Etsy.
Hey, Fright Rags, come on.
Yeah, Fright Rags.
Yeah.
All right, Jody, go to Etsy and find us some body soap with bodies in them.
It's amazing what you can find on Etsy.
I was about to say, when you mentioned earlier something about soap-based horror, I was like, I wonder if there is soap-based horror. And when I looked it up, I found Etsy shops full of horror soaps. Like you can bathe with the Necronomicon as your soap bar and just rub yourself with it. All kinds of soap. There's one that looks like Freddy's sweater in a soap form, Ghostface in soap form. So yeah, if you are the kind of horror fan who needs horror in your shower, it's available to you.
I don't know why this made me think of it, but Jody, in horror news, we didn't talk about that there's going to be a musical for the movie Teeth.
Oh yeah, that's right. I did hear about that.
What?
Yeah, someone's adapting the movie Teeth into a musical. God bless him.
Like a stage musical?
Yeah.
Or what?
Yeah. It just makes you think of that scene in Patch Adams where they like make that huge paper mache legs.
Yeah. Welcome to my cervix.
Yeah. I'm just imagining that, but for Teeth.
Jody,
tell us what Teeth is about.
Yeah, I don't have Mondo here, so I'm not sure if this is inappropriate or not. But I'm just imagining in one scene, she has to like hold a microphone down, and that sings. Like if there could be a song that comes from the woman's teeth singing, that would be a highlight of the musical, I think.
Like really get insight into what the vagina dentatus feels like after
like a love ballad.
Yeah.
It'd be the vagina monologues if it was a horror movie.
There you go.
I'll watch that.
Yeah. Watch the hell out of that.
Yeah.
I've seen weirder things.
No, definitely. No, so our dad advice is to bathe.
Bathe.
Is that our advice today?
I think be mindful of your cleanliness. It's a good thing. I guess all three of us are somewhat chronally challenged on the top of our head. So like, I still use I like to use kind of like a mint shower gel on my head just to kind of clean things up a little bit.
Mine's Pitbull Skull Razor. I'm not naturally as challenged. I just really hate combing my hair.
Yeah. Hey, I am challenged and I had to do it, but it's really convenient.
Oh yeah, especially when it rains.
Yeah,
literally just
pouring
rub your
rain
hand
today,
over
and I just wiped it right off like a squeaky.
Hydroplaning.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, I think that wraps things up for tonight. John, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you?
I mean, if it's social media, it's at CreepyPod on Instagram, CreepyPod on Facebook too. There's a Twitter account. I'm not on it, so you can say whatever you want about me on there. I'm never gonna look. Otherwise, episodes of Creepy drop on Sundays and Wednesdays. SCP Archives, they come out eventually, I think Tuesdays. And Bloody Disgusting Podcast comes out every Wednesday.
Awesome. All right. Well, next week you can listen to Dads from the Crypt go to the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror. The first episode will be in all the usual places. And then if you want to head over to our Patreon, you can immediately listen to episode 2. Then the week after, we'll wrap up Tales from the Crypt season 6 with You Murderer. We appreciate everyone for listening. We'd really appreciate if you'll give us a rating and review on iTunes, a rating on Spotify, and check out our YouTube for videos of these podcasts. With that, we thank you for listening to Dads from the Crypt.
Follow Dads from the Crypt on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or I will follow you to the grave. No, seriously, you really should watch. But be careful what you ask for. You may get it.